I'm Janice Hostegger. After 3 decades in the marketing business and many years of being an entrepreneur, I've learned a thing or two about marketing. Join me as we talk about marketing, small business, and life in between. Welcome to My Weekly Marketing.
In marketing, we all use words to sell our business. In social media, in emails or headlines, blogs, these messages all build our brand and sell our product. When you have something to write, what's your first step though? You may do what a lot of people do, and if I'm going to be 100% truthful, I've done it too, turn to ChatGPT to generate the first draft. After all, at the end of a long day, it can make writing that email or Instagram caption so much easier. But not all words are created equal. My guest today is Aurora Winter, an award-winning and best-selling author, TV producer, and thought leader who has helped countless entrepreneurs craft messages that don't just sound good, they sell offers and build wealth. Aurora pulls from her time in Hollywood, Silicon Valley, and her knowledge of neuroscience to talk to us about how your message can become your million-dollar asset, whether that's through a book, TEDx talk, speaking, or simply a brand story. Trust me, even if you're a good writer, our conversation will get you to rethink your wording. Here's my conversation with Aurora. Hey, Aurora, welcome to My Weekly Marketing.
Great to be on the show with you, Janice.
So we're talking a lot today about storytelling and the power of words, which I think with AI now and storytelling have taken on a lot more power than they have in the past. But talk to me about your background. Like what moment did you realize that the power of words that can transform your career and your income?
My background is as a serial entrepreneur. I've launched multiple 6 and 7 figure businesses and had 3 exits, but I also have a background in film and television. And I remember there was one specific, very stressful moment where the light bulb went on. And I discovered that the right words at the right time to the right people can change the trajectory of your life. And what happened was, this was decades ago when I was a young wannabe screenwriter and author, and nobody knew me. I didn't have any published books. I didn't have any award-winning screenplays. I didn't have a background at that time as a successful vice president in the film business. I was a nobody, but I was invited to pitch my screenplay that I'd been working on at a film festival. So my shoulder went into spasm beforehand. I was like so nervous because I realized, oh my gosh, in the next, 10, 20 minutes, I can ruin my career forever because there were 600 top executives from film and television from around the world in the audience. And if they didn't catch it in the audience, it was going to be aired on broadcast television, national television on CBC. And so I was very nervous beforehand, but I practiced what I wanted to say. And then when the lights came on and I had my moment and the stage, I was connected to my passion for the story and the script that I had written. And what happened was it triggered actually a bidding war. And my agent was there fielding offers on my behalf and selling television, and big Canadian producers and broadcasters are all bidding to work with me and to option that script. So I went from being an absolute nobody to being, having my 15 minutes of fame. And what happened as a result of the right words at the right time to the right people was basically it launched my career in film and television and turned into eventually 6 figures and various positions in film and TV. And much later, I raised $5 million and launched my own film and television production company. So what the story takeaway here is, well, many people are slaving away in their offices working on something. Don't forget to get out there and tell your story, because it's when you share your story that everything can change.
Oh, I love that story. First of all, I mean, congrats on that, even though it was a while ago. Congratulations on your incredible success with that. So where did you make the transition to entrepreneurials and using this information for entrepreneurs and business owners?
Oh, well, I've been an entrepreneur since my 20s. So I've sold my first business for 6 figures in my 20s. So always been a serial entrepreneur and always loved writing and storytelling. But it didn't strike me really until that moment pitching the movie I had written that the common thread in the success of all my businesses was telling a clear, compelling story about why it mattered to the listener, not why it mattered to me. So when we focus on what is the value add and how is it different or compelling or catchy, then you can start a whole conversation. So I forgot what the question was now, but basically, it's
Well,
been
it's
a
just
trajectory of storytelling, not only in film and television, but also as an entrepreneur.
okay. Yeah. Well, I think you answered it very well. That's the thing is that I think many entrepreneurs really struggle to put their story into words, right? And sometimes it's in part because we can't, it's our story and it seems sort of ordinary, I guess, in some respects. And maybe not for everybody. Maybe that's just but I mean, we have our origin stories and we have our aha stories. And what makes a sales story versus just being interesting?
Story selling instead of storytelling. What
Right.
is a very good thing to do is understand that you have dozens of stories, and you don't have to put them all together in one long 20-minute TED talk. Although you may do that, but it's good to just
Uh-huh.
break them apart and do one at a time. So, for example, what is the story of why you started your business? What is your origin story? What was the aha moment where you decided that you were going to solve a problem? And then who do you solve that problem for? And what is the biggest outcome? So you want to have that kind of origin story. So for example, I started a company called the Grief Coach Academy. And so what struck me is that the data shows that people on average suffer 5 to 8 years from grief if they don't get support. And that was a tragedy because I thought like that 5 to 8 years in the gray zone when you could be living a colorful life of meaning and purpose. So the Grief Coach Academy was about 9-step recipe that walked people through a process of transforming their grief into wisdom, into purpose, maybe not into happiness, but at least into meaning. And we would
Mm.
shorten that 5 to 8 year period, which data shows people typically suffer, to maybe 5 to 8 months or 5 to 8 weeks, or in some cases, even shorter.
Mm.
So that is a story about, it's got a little bit of data in it, but it's also got a really compelling, like, what the 5 to 8 years versus 5 to 8 months or 5 to 8 weeks? Tell me more. So your whole story doesn't have to result in a final sale. It can just be a tell me more. Or I launched a company that was in the yacht sales business. We set up a tax shelter. And so the snappy conversation opener for that was 5 weeks of sun, fun, and tax shelter. What?
Yeah.
Those don't go together. Tell me more. Right. So
Right.
then
Yeah.
I first started trying to sell that tax shelter by giving people this, 100-page document, which buried them in IT bulletins and too much information. So, what is the least amount of information you can give somebody else that will have them say, "Oh, tell me more"?
Mm.
An example for the publishing business that I run now, Same Page Publishing, on average, first time authors spend 3 to 5 years writing their first book. But if they do it with me, I interview them. They don't have to ever stare at the blank page, and we get it done much more quickly. And all of my authors become best-selling, award-winning authors. Tell me more, right? So each of these is
Yeah.
using that same recipe, just a little bit of information about
Mhm.
who you serve, what the outcome is, and how it is different from the standard outcome. And then the right people will say, "Tell me more," and the people who are not interested in buying a boat or publishing a book will say, "Tell me something else," and that's fine.
Yeah. I love that you broke that down into a formula because some of us are wired for facts and figures. All of us, I'm told, buy an emotion, even though we don't necessarily realize it. And you really combine those really well together
Thank you.
with
Well,
that formula. Yeah.
there's another formula I can share here really quickly, but I did want to piggyback on what you just said because most people, especially the more educated they are, we tend to communicate in facts and figures. But
Mhm.
actually, if you communicate in facts and figures, you will trigger the part of the other person's mind that does not buy. We buy with emotion and then we justify with facts and figures. But if
Right,
you
right.
trigger the analyst part of the brain, they always want more data, and that part of the brain is skeptical. So you don't want
Mm,
to lead with too many facts and figures. You might want to sprinkle
mhm,
one in there, like I did a couple of examples of that. 5 to 8 years of suffering, or
mhm.
5 weeks of sun, fun, and tax shelter. Just a little bit of data can be really useful. Or people suffer on average 3 years or so trying to struggle with the blank page, writing their first book all by themselves.
Mhm,
Just
mhm.
enough to, but then you want to, it's not, okay, here's a good example. So I said first time authors spend 3 years writing their book. I said they struggle for 3 years writing their book. That
Right,
little
right.
word is an emotional word. So just
Mhm,
data would be 3 years, but adding
mhm.
emotions is struggling for 3 years or staring at the blank page. Just a couple of words will add that flavor of emotion because as entrepreneurs, we solve problems. Therefore, we need to understand the problems that our ideal client is dealing with and let them know that we can help solve them.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
There's 3 steps to the neuroscience of effective communication, and I can give it to people quickly and they'll be able to remember it. I went into more detail about it in my book, Turn Words into Wealth, which
Mhm.
gives you 7 different ways to monetize your message. But as some real quick examples that I can give here today, the way the mind receives information is through 3 filters. The first filter is this even something I'm interested in? And that's the ancient reptilian brain or the croc brain. So, an example of that would be the title of a book, Turn Words into Wealth. So, there's
Mhm.
some benefit, there's some clarity. If people are interested in turning their words into wealth, or another book I have is called Marketing Fast Track. If they're interested in putting their marketing on fast track, tell me more. Or that would be the subject line in your email, or it would be the first thing that you say. Most people make the mistake at Rotary Club meetings and other meetings. They first say, my name is, my company name is, like, don't do that. Start with some kind of benefit. I didn't do it on this podcast, but I often say at the beginning, instead of, hey, Janice, it's great to be on the podcast, I often say, I look forward to helping people turn their words into wealth. So it's like, that's the croc
Mm,
brain. But the
mhm.
second thing that the brain is looking for is social proof. Human beings survived through the millennia, not because we were faster or had sharper teeth, but because of we were a tribe. So we're always looking for social proof. So, example, this book, it's got some awards on the cover. It won Outstanding Nonfiction Book of the Year when it came out in its category, which is publishing. So social proof is really important. Or this book, I write fantasy too, Magic, Mystery, and the Multiverse. It won the Reader's Choice Award, Best Book for Teens. So if you can slide in quick, what is the category that we're talking about? And can you even say it in a bit of a short, concise way? And then give a little bit of social proof. And then you can add a little bit of content. So, and the sequence does matter. So the little bit of content could be a story. It could even be a statistic. It could be your story about why you started your business. It could be a story of a client whose life you have changed. For example, a little example of that would be I helped a client. He first came to me. He wanted to be an author, but he had dreamt of that for years. He was a super busy litigation attorney, just couldn't find time to write this book. He brought a draft idea to me called The Mirthless Troll, which I did not think was a great title. And then when we worked together, his first book is now titled Confession of an Accidental Lawyer. It's won a dozen
Mm,
awards, including American Fiction Award. He's written a second book now, and his books have over almost 3 million page reads, over 100,000 readers, about 3,000 reviews on Amazon. So that's a little story. It has some statistics, but it also has the struggle part
mhm.
of it and then the celebration part. So that's a little hero's journey.
Mm. Right, right. So one of the things you say in your book, Turn Words into Wealth, is that a brand is a story.
Yeah.
So can you unpack that a little bit and give us an example of how powerful brand stories can attract clients or investors?
Yeah. A brand is actually super, super valuable. I don't know if anybody follows Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V.
Mhm,
He
mhm.
has been saying in this age of AI, the only thing that is going to remain as valuable is your intellectual property and your brand. So I
Yes.
really think this is very true because AI can produce so many words so quickly. But what is really valuable are your stories. Maybe you use AI to help you polish them, but your stories, your client stories. And the key thing about a brand that most people don't understand is a brand is not your logo. A brand is not what
Oh,
you
right.
say about yourself. A brand is not the colors on your website. A brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room.
Hmm.
So there's
Yeah.
very little space. There's very little space on other people's brains for who you are. So you want to keep saying who you are and what you stand for and the transformation you provide and share stories of that transformation with your clients, your patients, the people that you impact again and again, because the average people need to hear the story at least 7 times before they remember it. And I really
Hmm.
invite and encourage everybody to share it in a story format. Data shows that a story, a product or service plus a story can sell up to 27 times more revenue than if it's just presented as is. So stories
Mm.
add meaning, they add value, but they're also the things that go viral.
And one thing that I've noticed in working with myself or my own business and also working with clients is that if you don't define your brand, and by your brand, I mean the whole thing from your why all the way outward to your story, other people will do it for you. And if then you lose control of it.
Brand by default or by design. And as you probably read in my book, Turbines into Wealth, like Oprah is a great example of this. I mean, it was
Hmm.
very unusual when she chose to be on the front cover of every O magazine. That had not been done, but she knew the value of brand, right? And brands are the
Hmm.
most valuable things from Coca-Cola to Oprah. It's the brand that really retains the value. If you don't have a brand, then you're going to be just the same as every other service provider who does that same thing. And that is a race to the bottom of price.
Hmm.
And you'll end up
Right.
pricing at just barely survival level. And unfortunately, that could be just barely survival level for somebody in the Philippines, not somebody in Texas.
Right. Right. So, why do you think thought leaders need to be authors?
Well, the root of the word authority is author. And
Mm.
yeah, so if you, the fastest way and most effective way to have a compelling brand is to have a great book. Amazon is, as we were saying before we started recording, Amazon is the number 3 search engine. So if you solve a problem and you have a book on Amazon that's got a clear title and subtitle, you can reach people around the world and they can seek you out to solve that problem. And the really cool thing is the book has already served to attract your ideal client and repel people who don't want what your service is. But to be a thought leader, what does that really mean? A thought leader means you're leading other people in the direction that you're going. So what does that look like? That looks like keynote speeches. It looks like having a podcast, as you have, Janice. It looks like publishing a book or publishing a series of books. It looks like leading a charge, whether or not they work with your business. So Gary Vee is a great example of this. You know, he's got a media company and works with Fortune 500 companies. I do the same thing, only work with smaller companies, helping them with their messaging and their branding and their social media and getting on podcasts and radio and TV, etc. Um, but the key thing is Gary Vee is always talking about, hey, post on social media, post on social media. Here's what you could do. Here's how quickly you could do it. Here's how many times you should post. I think he has this theory that you should post 15 times a day on every platform. He's not saying, hire Gary Vee Media, Gary Vaynerchuk Media, whatever it's called. I think it's called Vaynerchuk Media. He's not saying that. He's saying post on social media, post on social media. So he is leading the encouraging people to do what he believes is right, and a certain proportion of those who can afford whatever $20,000 a month or $200,000 a month, whatever it is, the Fortune 500 companies will work with them. So whatever you care about, be willing to be a stand for that. As you're being a stand right now, Janice, you're being a stand for helping people get more clear on the marketing. I haven't heard you say even one time, hire me. right? So I think leaders lead where in the topics that they're passionate about. I'm passionate about encouraging people to consider writing a book and to do it the fast and easy way, and which usually means speaking your book, whether they do it with me interviewing them, or maybe they just speak it into their phone. Speaking it out is going to be a great solution. Yeah. So that's what, and also, and like I've had clients or prospects come to me who heard about me from Chat GPT because of
Nice.
my book. I have a book, so I'm on Amazon. I have a YouTube channel called Strategic Basics. Books are indexed in Goodreads, and so the GEO or the AI search engine on ChatGPT and code and such not is like people type in, "Oh, how can I get help publishing a book?" It's like Aurora Winter. She wrote the book Turns into Wealth, and I was like floored when I first heard that. So that's part of something that can benefit even a small relatively small entrepreneur to get the right book.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. That's one thing I love about really the internet in general is that it kind of levels the playing field. It's not just the big companies anymore. Anybody can develop their brand online.
Oh, and I
So,
want to say one more thing about this because I think people often think, oh, do I need an agent? I have to get a publisher. And I think that if you've been paying attention on the internet, Alex Hermosi has proven beyond a doubt that self-publishing is the most profitable way to go. He just launched his third book, 100 Million Money Models, on a YouTube live stream. I popped on when I was on, there were 80,000 people on that live stream. And he sold
wow.
3 million books and generated over $80 million in a weekend. So if he had published his book through a New York Times publisher, for one thing, that is astonishing. He won the Guinness Book of World Records for the fastest selling nonfiction book, selling about double what Prince Harry's book Spare sold. But if he had been with a big publisher, he would have gotten maybe 10 cents on the dollar if he was lucky. But because those sales all went through his company, acquisition.com, he keeps all of it. I mean, he has to pay for the shipping and
Sure.
etc. But anybody listening who's thinking you still have to go through the New York publisher and get an agent and go that, no, you don't have to do that. And the other one that broke this mold was Brandon Sanderson, who sold over $40 million of his books on Kickstarter. Again, direct to author. So there's more than one way to skin this cat.
Right. Just need to be a little creative. So talk to me about that $1 million message. So how does somebody start identifying their big idea? Let's say you are a thought leader or you're running a business and you have I have frameworks that I use that I think, oh, that I can turn that into a book someday or something like that. But how do you identify the one that's really going to move the needle for you?
I think what is really helpful is to look at examples of other $1 million messages and then see the formula and play with that and see if it works for you. So in my book, Turn Words into Wealth, I've given a whole bunch of examples, but let's give some examples right now so people can play with it. And also like test. You can actually pay to have things tested. I use an online service that does that, but you can also run it by people that make sure to run it by your ideal client, not by random people who are not in your
right. Yeah.
trying to meet. So an example of $1 million message would be the 4-hour work week. That's short, compelling, challenging, and totally busts the myth that a work week is 40 hours. So the 4-hour work week, well, tell me more. Like Tim Ferriss actually tested a bunch of other titles. Initially, I think it was called Drug Running for Fun and Profit because he had a vitamin supplement company.
Okay.
Did not like that title, but he tested various titles. He also tested various covers. He had a dummy cover. He wrapped another book in it and put the book on a shelf in a bookshelf and then hung around to see which cover colors and which title people were drawn to pick up. So, all right. So the 4-hour work week, and you break down your message for what you're up to into something like that. So what is a myth that you could bust? So he was busting the myth of a 40-hour work week, right? So the 4-hour work week is a super example. Another example would be a purple cow. So Seth Godin's book about marketing is called A Purple Cow. So
Hmm.
cows aren't purple. So what is he trying to say? He's trying to say do something unusual, right? Do something
Mm-hmm.
unusual. In fact, I have a
Hmm.
video coming out on my Strategic Basics channel about branding. And I make the point that it's better to be different than to do what everybody else is doing, just a little better, faster, or cheaper. And there's a young man, his name is Zach. He was featured on the BBC. Over 4 million people watched the video clip. He wears, he doesn't wear jeans. He doesn't wear t-shirts. He has got no modern clothes. He dresses in Victorian clothes all of the time that he wears and makes himself. Like, wow, he's got a brand. And other
And
people
you
now
remember it.
found him. And I remember it.
Yeah.
Zach Pinterest, I think, and other people were drawn to that, and now he's making by hand custom clothes for other people who want to dress as if they were living in the Victorian era, top hat
Really
and all. Yeah, so
fun.
choose that is a good brand because it's shockingly different, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
his
Yeah.
that's his $1 million message. I'm 25 years old and I don't own any modern clothing. I dress in Victorian clothes. Okay, so there are a couple of examples, and there's more examples in the book Turn Words into Wealth. Um, Lean into those and see if there's one of those models that would work for you. 5 weeks of sun, fun, and tax shelter is another example. So see if you can find and distill that. What about you? Have you
Mm.
got your $1 million message nailed, Janice?
I'm working on that. The problem is my message keeps morphing, and so that's my fear of putting it into a written format is that I guess I feel like I'm going to get it published and it's going to change because the world, it's about marketing. So the world keeps changing and marketing is like shifting sand, right? But yeah, we're working on that one. Um,
Well, I'd love to
so,
encourage you because you're probably speaking for everybody listening. You don't have just one message, and your message can and should evolve. But I see that the core of what you're up to, from the little that I know about you anyway, is something along the lines of I help solopreneurs have breakthroughs in their marketing and messaging.
mhm. It's really about how I simplify the process for people and take them step by step. Because I think what happens is that people just get so overwhelmed by all the things with marketing, and there are so many things. And what I see small businesses doing is spending a lot of time on social media and not getting any traction from it. They might try running ads and losing money on them, and they get frustrated. They don't know where to go. They start spinning their wheels, and eventually, some of them give up. And I think this is such a shame. So I guess that is a part of it. But yeah, so
So
that's
it's along the
some.
lines of I simplify marketing for small business owners so that they can overcome overwhelm and overspending on social media and get results with clarity and peace. Something like that.
Yeah, so I bring 'em down a trail, and so we hear so much about the marketing funnel. I think the marketing funnel is probably not the greatest analogy. I feel like it's a trail that people need to be moved along from one step to the next, based on their customer journey, and it's based on human behavior, not necessarily on the whims of or the trends that are going on, because we all, when we're introduced to something new or we're in need of something, we all really generally make the same decisions to get to the point from being aware of that they need something to buying it and referring others to it. So
So
anyway, but we're not
that's
here to talk about
great.
mine.
Let's talk about social media for just a second because I think people
Sure.
confuse the distribution method with the message. No matter how you distribute your message, you need a good message first. So first story, first message, first $1 million message, and then you can distribute it on YouTube or on Amazon in a book or on social media. But I think a lot of people make an error of thinking, oh, it's about social media. Social media is just the way you
Mhm.
distribute the message. You
Mhm.
need to have a
Mhm.
message first, but it's not one message. You need, multiple messages.
Right. So that leads me into my next question, which is what are some mistakes that you see that small business owners especially make when crafting their message or trying to craft their message?
I think the biggest mistake that people make is they know their business so well that they start talking at step 14 and they don't
Yeah.
meet the listener where they are. So consider that the listener just dropped the kids off at school, is rushing to the grocery store, is thinking about what she's going to make for dinner. And then you pop in on the social media feed or they're listening to a podcast or YouTube. You want the message to be meeting her or him at that point. So, for example, I've had people, try to explain what they're up to at my $1 Million Message training events, and the audience will, before they've been trained, the audience will say, I know I really like you. I know you're passionate about that, but I have no clue what you do. And then after simplifying their message and clarifying it, people in the audience will say, that's great, and let me invest. So that's a most common mistake that I see. What about you? What's the most common mistake you see?
I would say that I oftentimes will see people selling their product or service instead of the transformation that they're offering. Not stepping into the customer's shoes, because we're also invested in what we want to push, right? Instead of what their needs are. So I would say that I see that quite a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are, and we all go through these phases, right? I shouldn't speak for you, but most of us have to learn really what our customer needs to hear. I mean, I listen to podcasts all the time, and very rarely do I hear something that just like makes me like stand up and just listen and say, wow, that's it. They've hit on something that really resonates with me and that I've been missing all this time. And that actually happened to me last week. And I was like, this really changes everything. I'm going to buy this book and find out what this author was talking about and learn more about it. But to have that sort of clarity and know your customers so well that what's going to trigger that aha moment for them, or that spark where they are like, wait, what did she just say? You know, and
Right.
stand
What
up.
was the book? What was the book that stood out to you that you had to buy?
I scribbled it down. It was in the car, but it was kind of unrelated. It was actually about like fears as business owners. And for me, one of the things she said to the interviewer is that I sense that you're afraid you're going to run out of time. And for me, it was like, oh my gosh, that's me. That's why I'm working so hard. That's why I'm burning out. Is that I'm afraid I'm going to run out of time. Totally unrelated to what we're talking about here today. But it was like this clarity that was like, that is why I am pushing myself so hard, is that um, being that I'm not 30 anymore or 40 anymore, I'm, pushing to try and get through all of this and try and grow my business. So anyway,
Well, what
but
does relate to marketing is that, we can use the things that challenge us as fuel, or they can also show up and drain our energy and have us go to bed early because we're exhausted. So I love the neuroscience of it. If you can have something you really don't want chasing you, but also have what you really do want pulling you forward, that is the ideal way to a lot of momentum, but still keep the creative spark and the joy. Because if you only have something chasing you, that's not fun. But that is ideal. Like, it is good to recognize that we're all running out of time. We don't even have
yes,
tomorrow guaranteed. And I think, from my work with grief, the benefit of knowing that we're all mortal is that it does push us tick, 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 tick to see what difference we can make today and to tell the people we love them that we love them today and to forgive
right,
people who've harmed us today because we don't
right.
necessarily have tomorrow, right? But the
Yeah, yeah.
marketing lesson in
Right.
this is people are 5 times more motivated by fear than by something that they by greed or something that they want. And this is something I have to remind
Mhm.
myself because I'm such a positive person. And usually I tend to, my default is to talk about, the direction to go toward. And sometimes
Mhm.
I forget to also mention the thing that we're avoiding. And so good
The stakes.
marketing does both. That's at stake. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. And that is something that when I work with clients, that a lot of them don't want to add that. And I'll say, just, throw a little line or two in there about what'll happen if they don't buy this. Let them know that if they say no to this offer, what'll happen. And it feels a little awkward. I am a positive person, and we all want to paint this picture of, what's over there, in the future. But letting them know that there is a consequence to a decision, whether it's yes or no, there's always a consequence.
Yeah. Most people don't really realize that choosing not to do something is also a decision, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
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 So,
So that
so how can people learn more about you and they want to connect with you?
So they can find out more about me and my company at samepagepublishing.com. So samepagepublishing.com, because I've come on the same page as my clients and helped them with their books. Or I also
Love
help people
it.
just nail their $1 million message and amplify their impact and do a media quick start, whether or not they write a book. So samepagepublishing.com. And on that page, if you'd like to learn more, you can sign up for a free business breakthrough call. And if you'd like to get a copy of Turn Words into Wealth, you can also get it on that page for free.
Perfect. Thank you so, so much, Aurora. I love that our conversation tied everything together, from not just talking about marketing, but talking about behavior and psychology and all of that, because it's all so important in marketing. So I appreciate
Absolutely.
appreciate your wisdom that you shared today. So
Oh, it was really
thanks.
nice to hear your insights as well, Jana.
Do you see how there's so much more we could all be doing with our words? If this episode sparked some aha moments for your marketing, please share it with another business owner who needs to hear it. I would be so honored. For more information about Aurora or anything we talked about today, visit myweeklymarketing.com/124. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.